Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Flip That Shit. I'm your host, Stacey Uhrig, and my guest today is going to be Dr. Cindy Rubin. I cannot wait to bring you to her. But before we get started, I just want to remind you guys, if this is the first time that you've ever listened to this podcast, I want to share with you an overarching goal. The goal here is to help people come out of the shadow of shame. We all have experiences that have been challenging and difficult in life, but for whatever reason, when we were raised, a majority of us were kind of taught this idea of don't let people know when things in our life are difficult. Don't share when things are challenging, which even though they're not saying this, it inherently leads us to believe that life is supposed to be good all the time. And when it's not, it feels wrong, right? And that feels shameful because we look around and if everybody's portraying that everything's good all the time, and we know that that's not what's happening in our own lives, it makes us feel less than. The reality is that life is a series of experiences that are divinely designed for this, and they're not always all positive. It's the challenges that we go through in life that are those opportunities to grow, pivot, transform, change, which is part of our life lesson, right? So what I try to do with this podcast is meet people. I've only met Cindy one time for about 15 minutes a few months ago, just to get a name with a face and get an understanding of what our story was going to be today, but I don't really know her. And I purposefully pick random people because I know for sure everyone has a story. Everyone has multiple stories of shit. And so the goal is find someone that can come in, share a unique story with the hope that if her story or the person's story resonates with you, that you no longer feel isolated and alone in this particular experience, and it can help you come out of what I call the shadow of shame, right? This is where disconnect happens when we're not sharing struggle. So my goal today is to bring some insight to you from Cindy. You're going to love this story. And if this speaks to you, you should reach out to Cindy or reach out to someone that you feel like you can trust to share that this has been a challenge for you. So let me introduce you to Dr. Rubin. Dr. Rubin is a general pediatrician, but she's also a breastfeeding medicine specialist, and she practices in the western suburbs of Chicago. She worked in a large academic center as an outpatient general pediatrician for 13 years before opening her new direct pediatric care practice, In Touch Pediatrics and Lactation. Dr. Rubin loves providing pediatrics, breastfeeding medicine, and this is cool, fourth trimester care services in patients' homes when and where they need them the most. She continues to be involved in teaching medical students. She's an advisor for her breastfeeding and lactation fourth year elective. She serves as the co-chair for the Committee on Breastfeeding for the Illinois chapter of AAP and is a board member of the North American Board of Breastfeeding and Lactation Medicine. So welcome, Dr. Rubin.
Thank you. So nice to be here.
I'm so happy to have you because I think what we're going to talk about today is actually an area for so many women in particular that are walking with shame of not being able to connect with their infants by way of breastfeeding. And I know this is why you got into this. So I was wondering if you could share with us this story of what happened in your life and what brought you from being a general pediatrician into this breastfeeding medicine.
So when I started as a pediatrician, I was not married yet. I didn't have any kids. And I had always, that was just something that I always wanted to do, was have kids. And I imagined breastfeeding being this beautiful thing and, oh, it's going to be so easy. And through the years as a pediatrician, I had plenty of moms who were breastfeeding and had struggles. And I was very supportive, I think. I don't know, looking back, how supportive I really was, because I didn't know anything. I couldn't help them in the moment. And I would refer them to lactation consultants. And when I had my own first child, well, first of all, I remember vividly feeling like, whose baby is this first? So I had my baby. I had a really long labor. And when my son was put on my chest, I really felt like this was somebody else's kid. You know, I'm not sure why. I mean, when I thought about it at the time, I thought, well, maybe it's because I've been in a lot of deliveries and from the other side of it. And I didn't. And so I was thinking about it more clinically. And I thought I was going to have this immediate, huge, bond.
Right.
But I didn't feel that. I was like, I felt like I was a poser and this wasn't my child.
Amazing.
Very weird.
Yeah.
I thankfully had a amazing OB who put him on me and kind of showed me how to let him find his way to the breast. And I think he did. I don't remember those details very, very clearly, but there was immediate severe pain.
When breastfeeding.
When breastfeeding, yes. I also had broken my tailbone through the process of labor. So
goodness. Okay.
That was actually probably the worst pain I was experiencing. And I still, 11 years later, can feel that because I don't think anybody told me at the time how to take care of it properly, which takes me also into what I'm doing now. But I had a lot of pain. And everybody who watched me breastfeed said, looks good, latch looks good, we don't see any problems, it'll probably get better. Here, use this cream, try this nipple shield, this, that.
Right.
And it kept hurting,
And what did that pain feel like?
Oh my gosh. You really cannot imagine it. I remember hearing people talk about painful breastfeeding before this, and it is absolute toe curling pain.
Sharp.
And when you can anticipate that you are going to feel that every 2 to 3 hours, when you have to do this thing that you have to do, which is feed your baby, and it's supposed to be a pleasant thing. And I was, especially being a pediatrician, I felt maybe more so, maybe not, but women have this feeling like they should breastfeed.
Yes.
Women have this feeling and it's the right thing to do. And I had always wanted to do it. And on top of it, I was a pediatrician and I felt like I had to do it and I had to be successful. And here I am in pain, miserable. And I sought help from a few different lactation consultants. After a few days, maybe 24 hours, I had started to feel like my child was my own. So thankfully that happened. I think it just happened naturally.
Yes.
It's just the transition that had to be made. But I continued to have pain and I sought help from various places. There was a thought that maybe he had a tongue tie, and I saw a specialist, 2 lactation consultants, one of whom was a speech therapist who was amazing, and I still work with her. And they both said, no, doesn't look like he has a tongue tie. Usually this kind of thing, if we can't find any other reason for it, just kind of gets better over time. And they were right. It did eventually get better, probably about 3-4 months in. So I still struggled through several very, very difficult months. And I also remember coming home and just I really felt like I was having an out-of-body experience.
Yeah.
I was so tired, so tired. And I had been through residency. I had done all of these other things that had required lack of sleep, but this was different. And it was a very weird couple of months. I was home. I was by myself a lot of the time. I still remember the very first week, some point, the first week after coming home from the hospital, my husband was back at work and I thought I had a UTI. And so I had to go into the doctor. And I remember calling my husband in tears saying, I can't do this by myself. I can't put our child into the car, drive with my baby in the back seat, get him into the stroller and walk from the parking lot to I just was like, I can't do this by myself. I hadn't done it by myself yet. And he's like, I can't come. You have to do it. You can do it. You can do it. You can do it. And I did it. But that was really, really scary. And I've heard this a lot since.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I'm listening to your story and to preface this for anybody that's never heard my podcast, my children are not biological. My children are adopted. So I did not have the experience of pregnancy and childbirth and all the things that you're discussing. My kids were landed in my hands at 6 and 9 months old. Very, very different, right? Mm-hmm. There's a couple of things I want to ask you because I'm listening as you're telling this story and I can feel the feelings that you likely had in that moment. Okay. So the first thing that you mentioned, which, I've been taking some notes, was you talked about how it was a very, very laborious labor, a very long labor. And then you actually added in a side note. Oh, and by the way, I broke my tailbone in labor, like as though that's a side note. Okay. And you're saying to me, and then they put me him on my chest, and I don't even recognize. I don't know if anyone's ever had this conversation with you about this, but what I hear is I was pushing and pushing and pushing, trying to birth this child. I'm not easily able to do it. Something doesn't feel right. Look, I'm going to pull out my little brain. You're a doctor. This is going to make sense to you. Here we go. People know my brain. I pull it out all the time. Here's our amygdala. The amygdala is now engaged because this feels like a threat. I've got a child stuck in my birthing canal. I mean, what more threat do you have there? Like, I can't get this thing out. Okay. Mm-hmm. There's going to have to be something that's happening, but not only is he stuck, this hurts. Mm-hmm. And I've broken my tailbone trying to do it. What's going to happen? All kinds of things are going to happen in the brain. This prefrontal cortex, that's it. This whole thing's going offline when this thing is engaged. Okay. And so much happens in this prefrontal cortex, as you know. It doesn't surprise me from that experience alone that when this child was placed on your lap, that you could not connect, because at this point you are offline. And, we talk about this in my school all the time about childbirth can be very traumatic for both parties. It can be very traumatic for the person that's giving birth. And it can also be very traumatic for the infant if it's not an easy labor. Okay. Because they've got their own thoughts and feelings and experiences that are happening as they're going through this process, especially if there are emergencies involved or what have you. So it makes sense to me. And it's important for people to listen. Like this can be a part of the process because this is not an easy process for most people to give birth. Okay. It's traumatic. What does that mean? Well, trauma is never the event. It's not the fact that you gave birth. It's every single thought and every single feeling you had in that moment. I can't. I feel helpless. I have no control here. I feel powerless. all of these things, right? And I'm in physical pain, ... There's something wrong with me that I can't make this work, right? That's the trauma in these kinds of experiences. It's all of the things that you start to believe and you start to feel in this experience. I could feel it as you were talking, right? Now there's this shame because I should be able to feel this overwhelming feeling when this child's placed on my chest. I don't even recognize this kid because your fight, flight, freeze, and fawn have been engaged and you're in freeze mode. You have checked out, right? Okay, number one. And I'm saying this for the benefit of the listener because I think it's so important. That is a natural response to an unnatural circumstance.
Yeah. Yeah.
When we can see it that way, we can start to have more grace and less self-judgment. This is the way the brain is going to naturally react in this kind of circumstance.
Yeah.
Okay. And if you think you should be able to do it any other way, you're setting yourself up for the fall. Number one. Number two, breastfeeding. You said it. I should be able to do this. By the way, I'm a pediatrician. I'm this, them, that. I know all the things. What the hell? Why can't I do this? I should be able to. And by the way, if I don't, ... And I've heard this from a lot of my friends, family members. I'm a failure as a mother if I cannot feed my baby in the most natural way. So now the shame is I am ... whatever it is you want to put into that sentence. And you're in physical pain. And you're predicting physical pain. Right? So the trauma, again, is not the circumstance. It's not, I can't do this. It's all the things that you start to experience: shame, embarrassment, disconnect, feeling less than, right? That's the trauma. I want people to understand that. Mm-hmm. So when you and I were talking at the beginning, and I asked you if, offline, if having a difficult time breastfeeding was traumatic, you said, I never really thought of it that way, but yeah, it definitely was. What other feelings would you say you had in that experience that felt traumatic to you?
I think feeling like it didn't matter to other people that I was in pain as long as the baby was gaining weight.
This is good.
Baby's fine. Yeah. You're good. Just keep going.
So does that feel like dismissive?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
I have right here, this is a feelings wheel. Okay. Mm-hmm. And as you can see, it's smaller in the middle, it gets wider and bigger. And each piece, each section is a different feeling type: bad, angry, sad, happy. And as it goes out, it gets more descriptive with the words. Mm-hmm. Okay. And things like feeling dismissed, feeling unheard, unseen, that your challenge is not significant or important, can feel very disconnecting. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah.
So you go through this experience, and what are you thinking in that moment?
What do I do?
Right. There's that helplessness.
Yeah. I mean, do I stop and feel like a failure?
Right.
Do I keep going and be a martyr? You know, do I just hope that it is going to get better? And like, I do just have to keep going, you know, no matter what. I don't have a choice. I have a baby.
Now we're parents. Now we're in the trenches. Figure it out.
Yep.
But by the way, I'm exhausted trying to figure it out.
Yes. Yes. I mean, it's just incredibly exhausting. And then at somewhere here, I go back to work too.
Right.
Which was a whole different sort of thing. I had to.
Was it what you predicted? Or what you planned for? Because we always plan for these things. You know, we have this plan of attack. oh, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And it seems so easy on paper. And then when you're in the trenches with it, you're like, what was I thinking?
Yeah, I think it probably matched my expectations. I knew it was going to be hard. I knew it was going to be hard to be separated. I knew it was going to be hard to try to fit pumping into my schedule, seeing patients. And, this is when I was in a traditional kind of clinic seeing 30 patients a day. And somewhere in there, I have to pause and pump. And I was always tempted, if I was running late, to just let go of my pumping session so that I wouldn't be running late. And I forced myself not to do that. And I'm proud looking back at the situation. I'm proud of myself for doing that and standing up for myself there. But yeah, it was just feeling like nobody could really tell me what to do. And I didn't necessarily trust that I was going to do the right thing, which I guess is kind of how I feel just throughout the entire experience of parenting.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's fair, right?
Yeah.
There's no textbook for this one.
Right.
Right. So you go back in traditional pediatrics. Are you starting to have a different connection and different relationship to moms that are coming in with infants?
Absolutely. I mean, my whole experience, I think, of being a pediatrician changed. First of all, there were some really stupid things that I had said to moms before that.
Like what?
So I remember having babies that weren't quite gaining weight as much as they needed to. And I'd say, well, instead of feeding him every 3 hours, just feed him every 2 hours. That's easy, right? Just feed him more frequently. What in the world? Like, you're not even done with the first feeding when you get to that 2 hours, pretty much. So if you do that, which sometimes you do, I mean, sometimes that just happens naturally, but to actually tell somebody to switch when their baby is on a 3-hour schedule that they are waking up for on their own, to switch to making that somehow happen more frequently, it's not possible. It's truly not possible. And I realize now that, like, that's,
and think of the pain. I've had a few friends whose kids were having a hard time gaining weight at the beginning. They're panicked. As a parent, they're feeling, maybe they can breastfeed, but they're feeling the same way you can, which is powerless and helpless. Like, what is it going to look like if my child doesn't gain the weight, and then the brain development, and then this and then that and the whole thing? And then you're being given advice that's literally impossible to follow. I can only imagine a mom went back to the car and just burst into tears and said, I'm not cut out for this. Right?
It's horrible that I probably made people feel that way.
But I will say this, as we're talking about this, there's going to be somebody that hears this podcast and says, thank you. Thank you for acknowledging that I literally can't do it. And I feel horrible about that. So maybe I shouldn't be actually able to do this. Maybe I should be able to question the pediatrician or start to seek some other kind of advice here.
Yeah. I mean, I have realized, I think, as both a parent and a pediatrician, just how much you have to advocate for yourself.
100%. And look, we're raised to not question authority. And we're certainly raised to rely on the expertise of experts. And, offshot, totally different conversation. I have had to have some very strong, confrontational conversations with a handful of doctors with regards to both of my boys. And I had to go based on my intuition and my own research, because I knew I wasn't being guided appropriately. So, advocacy is huge, and really trusting your gut and trusting your knowing and speaking up is okay sometimes. So you go through this experience, it's shifting and changing the way you practice medicine. And I would have to guess shifts and changes the way that you even maybe looked back and said, this is what they taught me.
Oh, yes.
In medical school, this is how they taught me to be a pediatrician. This isn't even in alignment with raising a child per se.
Right. Well, breastfeeding is not taught.
Okay.
Or was not, I should say, but still is for the most part not taught. And that's part of the problem is people don't, the doctors don't really understand what's going on and what the process is like and how to support people through it. And what I found was that I definitely knew more how to support women who were breastfeeding, but I still was basing it kind of on my own experience.
Okay.
I didn't feel like I could really help people in general.
Because you were having a hard time in general on your own with that.
Well, yeah, partially that, but partially that everybody's experience is different and their problems were different than mine. And so I hadn't gotten training in how to help them with that problem. So I was stuck. I could be as supportive as I wanted to be, but also in 15 minutes, mind you, I would have to do that.
Cannot imagine. So fast forward, what needed to happen in order for you to say there was something I was meant to gain from this intense challenge, and I need to make a massive shift here based on my experience?
Yeah. So depends on how far we're fasting. We're
fast forwarding.
Thank you. Fast forwarding. Fasting forward. So I decided to become a lactation consultant because as far as I knew, that was basically the way to learn more. And it was. I learned a lot. It took me a long time because now I had a full-time job and a child. And I don't think I finished it until after I'd had my second child, actually. It was, just doing it little by little. And I learned more. But during that time, I also learned that there is something called breastfeeding medicine, which is different because it is a type of breastfeeding care and support that is medical, not only counseling and education.
So what is that? What does that look like?
Yeah. So here's an example. So women have, frequently women get recurrent plug ducts, which is actually what ended up happening with my second child. And lactation consultants are trained to help with this to some extent, just kind of general recommendations, but they cannot truly go in and evaluate the full medical situation that might be contributing to it. Do lab work. Usually with plug ducts, there's not really lab work, but let's say it's low production. They can't do that evaluation. They're not trained as medical people. Some are nurses, most are nurses, but even in nursing, you don't learn how to do that. It's not in your scope of practice. So unfortunately, like we already talked about, the pediatricians and the OBs and the family practice docs, they don't learn about it either. They have the medical know-how, but nothing having to do with breastfeeding.
Which is so interesting, by the way, to me, because, this is a body part that has a function, right? But yet nobody's studying the dysfunction of the body part in a way that can help people.
Right. Well,
right?
It's very interesting that even now, the majority of research and evidence that we have is from the dairy industry.
Come on, Cindy.
I'm completely serious.
I mean, how many breast medicine doctors do you think there are in the country? If you had to take a stab.
Oh, that's a good question. It is growing. So what I discovered is that there is training specifically for this.
Yes.
That is geared towards physicians and teaches you the evaluation and management of breastfeeding problems. And that's our function. You know, we can help with latching and do a lot of the other stuff. And actually, I love those visits.
Yeah.
But that our purpose is to help with the more complicated problems.
Yeah. I mean, my sister had mastitis.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God. She was like, I think I might die. Yeah. Like, I'm so sick. I have a fever, for God's sakes. Like, they're telling me to do all these things in the shower. Like, I'm in absolute deafening, excruciating pain.
Yes.
And I don't know what to do.
Yeah. 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 And there's a lot of misguidance out there too.
I think so.
And misinformation and, you know, myths that have been passed down, not only in the general population, but in the medical world too. And so we as physicians have been giving bad advice, and I don't know the numbers. So we are starting, I'm on this board of breastfeeding and lactation medicine, and we are hoping to have our first cohort of people by 2024, get certified. And we have been trying to figure out the answer to that question ourselves, because in creating this certification, we have to figure out what all the people who are doing this are doing. You know, what is our scope of practice? And so we're trying to figure out those numbers too. I honestly can't even give you a stab in the dark, but it is getting larger. I mean, I would say in every state, there are probably a few.
That's what I'm thinking. 3, 4, 5. I mean, which is not nearly enough. And I think actually the bigger problem is people probably don't even know it exists. Right. So I'm really glad that we're doing this today, because again, you know, people know me as this trauma specialist, but tell me that it's not traumatizing when a mom feels horrible for not being able to breastfeed her child and is desperately trying to do it through excruciating pain.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Really traumatic. I mean, I talk about this, how women who really had problems breastfeeding start to experience PTSD when they have their second baby.
Can we talk about that? Because I can only imagine someone's listening to this and probably has some tears rolling down their face. Like, shit, I wish I had Cindy in my boat when I was going through this, because this is my story. And and you feel guilty for being triggered by having another child.
Exactly.
Right? So here you are. Let's just use your experience. You have child number 2. You're going through lactation training and you're having a hard time breastfeeding with number 2, right?
And of course, with number 2, I thought, well, I had my tough experience with number 1. So this one will be fine. I know what I'm doing. And absolutely not. It was a whole different story.
And did that feel like PTSD for you?
You know, I don't know that it was PTSD, but it was like, God, no, I have to go through this again. It's painful again. Like, come on. I think I had been, yes, I mean, I probably had not unpacked it, and there probably was some PTSD, but I think it was more like, just come on. Can't I have one good experience with this?
And so while you're going through this, let's talk about, you know, PTSD in general. We don't have to get specific, but look, when you're having this post-trauma stress, right? It's post-traumatic stress disorder. It basically means my body is overreacted and hijacked, basically, right? My vagus nerve is absolutely hijacked from these experiences. And every time I have experiences that leave me feeling the same way, because remember, trauma is the feeling. It's the way that we interpret this experience. And I never learned how to process it the first time. So here we are all over again. It's like Groundhog's Day. Mm-hmm. And what happens when this is happening? You're trying to bond with your child. You're trying to feed your child, and your brain is hijacked, your amygdala is hijacked, your vagus nerve is hot. You've got fluttering of your chest. You may be perspiring, your stomach's all in a knot. Like you're having what we would call some sort of anxiety or some sort of panic. This is the way that the body is showing up, or we get into a depressive state if we're going to go hypoarousal, right? Mm-hmm. So our window of tolerance is short anyway, because we're tired as hell because we have an infant. So like our window of tolerance is this, and you might even have like 1, 2, 3, or 4 children pulling on your other legs while you're trying to do this, wanting to be super mom. This is what you want. Like you just want to be a mom. And like, what's more mom-ified than being able to breastfeed your child and like latch and bond, right? Right. So not ignoring the fact that your body is now in this state of reaction because you're having a hard time doing it, and you're telling yourself, I should be able to. Should is the key word here. Yeah. Because if you can't and you're telling yourself, I should be able to, you're automatically telling your mind, this is broken and this is wrong. Yeah. Right? So now we're not even functioning in a normal state. Right. Which is making us feel worse. I should be enjoying motherhood. I shouldn't be feeling this way. There's that shit again. So now you have all of this layering on top of. It's exhausting. Yeah.
Yeah. And I want to point something out here that there's a lot of pushback now, kind of anti-breastfeeding professionals who are pushing this on people and making people feel guilty about making people feel guilty if they can't do it.
Yeah, 100%.
But honestly, I don't think that other people are making you feel guilty or making you feel guilty.
No, it's self-judgment.
It's right. It's self-judgment. And, fortunately or unfortunately, breastfeeding, we do know that it is the perfect food for your child.
Right.
And yes, in an ideal world, we'd want you to do it, and you'd want to do it maybe, and maybe you don't want to do it, and that's okay too. But if you can't, so what we need is people who can take the time and support to help people to not feel guilty.
That's what I was wondering when you were talking about this, and I'm thinking about your practice. Like in your practice, do you have a mental health professional or someone who can then work on that aspect of the experience? I mean, this is really an experience, right? One is I'm trying to get my body to function in a way I wanted to optimally function, not just for me, because I think it's a very normal 4th trimester function of your body. Yeah. Right. But also for the benefit of my child, because I know everything they need, I'm producing. Right. Sometimes the issue is that you're not producing, right? But whatever the challenge is, and then the mental stuff that comes associated with the experience.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I am just solo in my practice, so I don't have a mental health professional in my practice, but I have a long list of people who I refer to. Yeah. And work closely with. Yeah. Yeah. It's almost everyone needs this. Especially once they get to me with breastfeeding problems. I mean, sometimes breastfeeding problems, I think, go hand in hand with anxiety and depression. Like,
no question.
Mm-hmm. But then sometimes you get those mental health issues as a result, not to mention just with being a new mom and postpartum changes.
So you're in the western suburbs of Chicago. Are your services only available to people who live in Chicago area?
So my in-person services, yes. Breastfeeding medicine is medicine in general, I think, is better done in person. But I'm licensed in Illinois, so I can do virtual visits anywhere throughout Illinois. And I've had people drive to me from out of state as well. I can't practice across state lines, but if you came to me, right now I don't have a brick and mortar at all. So it's either virtual or in your home, but
that's amazing.
I'm hoping that at some point I will have some sort of option so that when I can't get to other people, they can.
But think about what you were sharing earlier about just the stress and the anxiety and sometimes the physical, especially if you've had a C-section. And in your case, you had a broken tailbone.
Yes.
Getting out the door, we don't think it's going to be so hard, right? So I love the fact that you're able to come to these homes. What a blessing for these families.
I love it too. And there's so many aspects to it. There's that part of it that they don't have to leave the home, but there's also so much more that I see and can help.
I was just thinking that.
And it's such a different experience. Now, in order to do that, you need time, obviously.
Yes, of course.
So it's basically impossible within the confines of the traditional system because if you're only going to get reimbursed this much from an insurance company, you just can't afford to take that time unless you truly are doing this without needing any sort of financial means from it.
So let's talk. If someone's in Illinois, okay, and they want to find you, how would they best reach out to you?
So the best way, I think I've made it very easy from my website. So www.intouchpediatrics.com. And it's, I have like lots of buttons for you to click to find me. And my email is on there, phone number's on there. You can call, text. So I think I'm pretty easily reachable. I have a lot of informational videos that I put out, and I have my own little YouTube show where I interview other people who are kind of in the perinatal space, parent space.
And what's the name of that show, Cindy?
That is called Keeping in Touch.
Okay. And people can find that on YouTube.
Yep.
And then are you on social media at all?
Yep. So Facebook, Instagram. I'm toying with TikTok, but
I get
quite gotten the knack of it yet.
And how can people find you on Instagram?
In Touch Peds.
In Touch Peds. Awesome. Yep. So here's a question I have for you. Let's just say there's a mom who doesn't live in Illinois. Or does live in Illinois, but maybe can't get to you or whatever the situation is. What kind of resource would you recommend as like a first step for these moms where they've listened to this and they're like, oh my God, this is my experience and I'm pregnant again and I want to have a different experience, or this was my experience and I can't believe she caught it, right? Like she just named it. Or I'm in it right now. Like, what can they do? What kind of resource would you recommend for them to check out?
Yeah. So, one of the things that I offer through my practice is something called a 4th trimester package and 4th trimester care. And there are other people doing this in the United States and elsewhere. But in my case, it's a 6-week package where I am your pediatrician in your home for 6 weeks. I am your lactation helper for whatever you need. If you have issues and need my help, if you're not breastfeeding, that's fine too. I do mental health screening. I do pelvic floor screening. I don't do these therapies because I'm not trained in them, but I can help to figure out, do you need to see somebody? I can make sure your partner is doing okay. I can try to make sure that you're finding some time to hang out with your other kid. And, I just can help with the big picture. And the interesting thing is that I do have more takers on this package who are second time moms.
Because they know
that they're going to need it. And I think everybody should have this. So there are other places that you can get this. So if you know that you need specifically breastfeeding medicine support or fourth trimester care sort of thing, there actually is a place now, something called LACT MAP.
LACT MAP.
Yes, LACTMAP. If you just Google that, I think you will find it. Where people who are doing this have, you can put in where you live and find.
Okay, so let's get these resources into the show notes. Really important here. We've got some terms people can now Google, right? Sometimes the benefit of these shows is just learning a language, right? So here's some extra language here. Fourth trimester support, right? Breastfeeding medicine. And LACT MAP.
Yes.
This could be changing someone's life right now.
Yeah. And if you do have money to throw around, there is a fairly new organization called the Center for Fourth Trimester Care that is really working on not only just supporting people who are doing this care, but advocating for this being the standard.
It really should be the standard. Why is it not?
And in other countries, these packages may not be the standard, but there are home visits in most other countries. Maybe not most other countries, but like in a lot.
In many.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not that off the mark that this, other people have figured out that this needs to happen, but we don't prioritize women's health in the United States. I mean, just period.
Sister, that is a whole other podcast.
Right.
Let's just face it. I'm really feeling so good about this episode because I think this is an area that women don't talk about. Yeah. I think this is an area of shame that women do not discuss because it makes them feel less than as a mom. And I'm just here to say you are awesome and not less than at all. And it's so important that we can start to have open dialogue about these kinds of experiences that primarily only women have, where we need to come together, women supporting women, as a village, as a community, as we would have many, 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 many generations ago when we were living in a more communal lifestyle, where we would be not doing this alone and feeling these things alone, and you would have the right support. Right? So important that people understand that today. Whatever it is that you're experiencing in motherhood or in breastfeeding or in that fourth trimester, I had never even heard that term till my sister was pregnant.
Yeah.
Right? It's so important that we start to open up the conversation about these things because motherhood is hard in general. Mm-hmm. Anything that makes it extra hard, let's try to soften that blow a little bit, right? Yeah. Thank you so much.
I just want to say one other thing.
Please.
And everything like
that,
I think that if you find a breastfeeding medicine physician, if you need that or fourth trimester care, none of us are going to be pushing breastfeeding on you. We are very non-judgmental. I mean, I can't speak for everyone, obviously, but I don't care if you breastfeed. But if you want to breastfeed, I will try to help you have the best experience possible.
Mm-hmm.
But it is your choice, and you should never feel like you have to do it if it's not something you want to do, or if you've gotten to the point where you say, this is it.
Right. I'm surrendering to what my body is saying to me.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Oh my gosh. This has been so great. And I feel really good about it because I know someone's going to listen to this and start to hopefully let go of some of that self-judgment and start moving in a different direction. So Thank you so, so much. I just want to remind people how they can find you. It's In Touch Pediatrics, and your social media handle on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and a little bit of TikTok is In Touch Peds. This is Dr. Cindy Rubin. This is a great episode, guys. So if you enjoyed this episode, I have many more that you can tune into. All you have to do is search Flip That Shit or my name, Stacey Uhrig, hit the subscribe button, and you'll have access to all of the amazing interviews we've done up to this point. So thank you so much for tuning in, and have a great day.